Picture this. You've worked 40 years, saved what you could, and now you're ready to enjoy retirement. But what if I told you the average retirement income numbers you see everywhere are completely misleading? The reality of what most retirees actually live on will shock you, and it's probably not what you're planning for. Today we're pulling back the curtain on retirement income in America. I'm going to show you the real numbers, explain why the averages lie, and reveal what retirees are actually living on. By the end, you'll know exactly where you stand and what you need to do about it. The numbers game: why averages deceive. When financial websites talk about average retirement income, they love throwing around numbers like $70,000 or $80,000 annually. Here's the problem. That's not reality for most people. The median income for Americans 65 and older is actually $48,780 per year. That's a massive difference, and here's why. A small number of extremely wealthy retirees skew the average upward, making the typical retirement look much rosier than it actually is. For those over 75, the numbers get even grimmer. Income often drops to under $40,000 annually, right when healthcare expenses are climbing their steepest. So, while you're reading about comfortable retirement averages, the typical American retiree is living on less than $50,000 a year, and that includes everything: Social Security, pensions, savings, even part-time work. Social Security, the foundation that's cracking. Let's talk about where retirement income actually comes from, starting with the biggest piece of the pie. Social Security provides the largest chunk of income for most retirees. In 2024, the average Social Security benefit is about $1,976 monthly, which works out to just over $23,700 per year. Married couples do slightly better, averaging around $3,200 monthly, or about $37,000 annually. But here's what's really sobering. For approximately 20% of retirees, Social Security is their only source of income. Think about that. 1 in 5 retirees is trying to live on roughly $24,000 a year with no safety net, no backup plan, and no margin for error. That's barely above the federal poverty line, and it's supposed to fund their golden years. The cost of living adjustments aren't keeping pace either. In 2024, Social Security got a 3.2% increase, but essential expenses like food, housing, and healthcare rose faster than that. Every year, that Social Security check buys a little less, while retirees have fewer options to make up the difference. The vanishing pension promise. Remember when pensions were the second leg of the retirement stool? Those days are largely over. Traditional defined benefit pensions have become as rare as affordable housing in San Francisco. Most retirees either don't have a pension at all, or they receive modest payouts, often around $10,000 annually when they exist. This represents a massive shift in retirement risk from employers to individuals. Previous generations could count on a steady pension check for life. Today's retirees are largely on their own, trying to make their 401k and IRA balances last through potentially 30 years of retirement. Personal savings, the shaky third leg. This brings us to personal retirement savings, and the numbers here are particularly troubling. While financial advisors talk about the importance of building substantial retirement accounts, the reality is much different. Half of retirees with retirement accounts withdraw less than $1,730 per year from them. Not per month, per year. Many retirees are afraid to touch their savings, worried about running out of money. Others simply don't have enough saved to make meaningful withdrawals. The result is that the third leg of the retirement stool, personal savings, is often more like a toothpick than a sturdy support beam. For many people, their retirement plan was their home. The idea was to downsize, unlock that equity, and live off the proceeds. But reality often falls short of expectations. After taxes, real estate fees, moving costs, and the reality of what smaller homes actually cost, many retirees find they have far less available cash than they anticipated.
The expense reality check. Now, let's talk about the other side of the equation: what retirees actually spend. In 2023, Households headed by someone 65 or older spent an average of $60,870 per year. That's over $5,000 monthly. Notice the problem? The median retirement income is around $48,780, but average spending is over $60,000. That's a structural deficit that forces retirees to dip into savings, sell assets, or accumulate debt. Housing remains the largest expense category, with retirees spending about $21,445 annually on mortgages, rent, property taxes, and maintenance. Healthcare comes in second, at $7,500 to $8,000 yearly and climbing fast. Food, transportation, insurance, and utilities round out the major categories. Here's a real-world example. A retired couple in Phoenix with a paid-off mortgage still spends over $5,200 monthly between Medicare premiums, copays, groceries, utilities, and car repairs. Their income? $3,500 from Social Security and $500 from a small pension. The math doesn't work, and they're running a monthly deficit that's slowly draining their savings. Geographic arbitrage. Location determines lifestyle. Where you retire matters more than almost any other factor in determining your quality of life. That $50,000 retirement income goes dramatically different distances depending on your zip code. In low-cost states like Mississippi or Arkansas, you might live decently on $45,000 annually. But in high-cost areas like Maryland, Connecticut, or Hawaii, you might need $90,000 or more just to maintain a modest lifestyle. State taxes add another layer of complexity. Some states tax Social Security benefits, pensions, and IRA withdrawals. Others, like Florida and Texas, don't tax retirement income at all, allowing your dollars to stretch further. There's a reason retirees flock to states like Arizona, North Carolina, and Florida. It's not just the weather, it's the math. Someone living in a paid-off home in rural Georgia might live comfortably on $42,000 annually. Meanwhile, that same income in Los Angeles barely covers rent for a one-bedroom apartment. This geographic arbitrage can be the difference between financial stress and financial freedom in retirement. The healthcare time bomb. Healthcare deserves special attention because it's often the expense that destroys retirement budgets. Fidelity estimates that the average retired couple will need around $315,000 just to cover out-of-pocket medical expenses during retirement. That doesn't include long-term care, which can run $80,000 or more annually. We've seen countless retirees who seemed financially stable until a health crisis hit. A single surgery, cancer treatment, or extended rehabilitation stay can completely wipe out years of careful savings. Not because of poor planning, but because the healthcare system is designed in a way that makes aging expensive. Medicare helps, but it doesn't cover everything. Premiums, deductibles, copays, and coverage gaps add up quickly. Many retirees are shocked to discover that Medicare doesn't cover dental, vision, or long-term care, exactly the services they're most likely to need as they age. The debt surprise. Here's another myth that needs busting: the idea that retirees are debt-free. In reality, nearly 60% of Americans over 65 carry some form of debt: credit cards, car loans, and yes, even mortgages. High-interest debt like credit cards can be particularly crushing when you're on a fixed income. I know of retirees with $8,000 in credit card debt paying $200 monthly just in interest charges. When your total Social Security check is $1,800, that interest payment represents more than 10% of your entire income, money that could have gone to groceries, medicine, or basic living expenses. The inflation erosion. Inflation is the silent killer of retirement security. Even at modest rates of 2 to 3% annually, inflation cuts purchasing power in half over 20 to 25 years. That Social Security check that seems adequate today will buy significantly less in 10 or 15 years. The problem is compounded because retirees often face higher inflation rates than the general population.
Healthcare, housing, and food, the biggest components of retirement spending, often inflate faster than the overall economy. So while the official inflation rate might be 3%, retirees might experience 4 to 5% inflation in their actual spending.
What this means for your planning. If you're still working and planning for retirement, these numbers should be a wake-up call. The 70 to 80% replacement ratio that financial planners often cite, the idea that you'll need 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income, is often unrealistic given current savings rates and Social Security benefits. Let's run some real numbers. If you want $70,000 annually in retirement and Social Security provides $24,000, you need your savings to generate $46,000 yearly. Using the 4% withdrawal rule, that requires $1.15 million in retirement savings. To accumulate that much by age 65, starting at age 35 with a 7% annual return, you'd need to save about $815 monthly for 30 years straight. That's assuming Social Security remains unchanged, which is questionable given the program's long-term funding challenges. If Social Security benefits are reduced, you'd need even more in personal savings to maintain your lifestyle. Building multiple income streams. The solution isn't just saving more, it's creating multiple income streams that can provide security and flexibility in retirement. This might include dividend-paying investments, rental property income, part-time work, or even starting a small business based on your skills and interests. Even a few $100s monthly from additional sources can make the difference between financial stress and financial comfort. A $300 monthly side income adds $3,600 annually to your retirement budget, enough to cover many unexpected expenses, or simply provide breathing room in your budget. The Social Security timing game. Here's one strategy that can dramatically impact your retirement income: when you start taking Social Security benefits. Most people don't realize they have significant control over their monthly payment amount based purely on timing decisions. If you claim Social Security at the earliest possible age of 62, you're accepting a permanent reduction of up to 30% in your monthly benefits. On the flip side, every year you delay past your full retirement age until age 70 adds roughly 8% to your monthly check. And that increase is permanent and inflation adjusted. Let's put this in real dollars. Say you're eligible for $2,000 monthly at your full retirement age. Claim early at 62, and you might only get $1,400 monthly. But wait until 70, and that same benefit becomes $2,640 monthly. That's a $1,240 difference between the earliest and latest claiming strategies. Every single month for the rest of your life. Run those numbers over 2 decades of retirement, and the patient retiree receives over $297,000 more in lifetime benefits than the early claimer. For many people, this single decision represents the difference between scraping by and living comfortably in retirement. If you want more retirement tips, make sure to subscribe for more future videos.